Craving your next action-packed adventure? Audible delivers thrills of every kind on your command, like Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, where a lone astronaut must save humanity from extinction, narrated with stunning intensity by Ray Porter. From electrifying suspense and daring quest to spine-tingling horror and romance in far-off realms, unleash your adventurous side with gripping titles that'll keep you guessing. Discover exclusive Audible originals, hotly anticipated new releases, and must-listen bestsellers that hook you from the first minute. Because Audible knows there's no greater thrill than the one that speaks to you. Discover what lies beyond the edge of your seat. Start your free 30-day trial at audible.com/WonderyUS. That's audible.com/WonderyUS.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 47 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, what's going on?
What's happening?
I'm doing good, man. Ready to bust out an interesting episode of
Bust out?
Unsolved.
Bust a move?
I'm going to bust a move.
Can you bust a move?
Maybe in the old days.
Did you?
Yeah.
Listening to your what? NWA?
Maybe.
Is that what you were jamming out to?
Maybe.
Something
Eric
like
B. and
that?
Rakim.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Huh.
Then I switched to country.
It's the country.
Very varied in my musical tastes.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you are.
All right, let's do Patreon supporters. We had a little bit of hubbub with Patreon over the last week or so.
Bubba.
You know, they made this crazy announcement that they were going to tack on some additional fee, and everybody got ticked off. Not our support. I mean, we did lose some supporters, but it was mostly the creators that said, hey, we don't want this. We don't want our patrons charged extra money.
Yeah.
So then, I don't know, a few days later, they came back and said, you know what? We're not going to do that.
They came to their senses.
They came to their senses. The problem is we lost a lot of support. Other podcasts lost a lot of support. It was a debacle.
It was.
But we got a lot of new supporters, so I want to give them a shout out. We have Amy Rocamontes, Marianne Kershaw, Paul Morrell, Brandy Hensley, Allison Deming, Leanne Westvang, Troy Tempest. Got some cool names, man.
Troy Tempest. Yeah, don't mess with them.
Don't.
TT.
It sounds like an Avenger or something.
TT.
Superhero.
Double T.
Double T. Rebecca Morgan, Jen Miller, Salma Flores, Crystal
You can do it.
Elganian.
Okay.
I really hope I'm close. There's 3 A's in pretty quick succession here.
2 are silent.
So I'm hoping Crystal reaches out to me because I'm really interested as to whether I got it right or not. We had Channing Thomas, Angie Barnes. Then on PayPal, we had Eugene Pace.
Eugene.
Made a pledge, which
Yeah.
is great. You got to give love to our PayPal supporters as well.
Absolutely.
And then if we go back into the Patreon vault, this week we selected Scott K. Scott's been around forever.
Scotty K.
Scotty K supporting us month after month. And so, big shout out to our new supporters, on Patreon, the people that support us on PayPal, and the people that continue to support us month after month financially, but also on social media.
Yeah.
It's
Future
big.
supporters, too.
Future supporters.
I know you're out there.
They are out there, and eventually they'll come around
Yeah.
to the
Come on.
TCAT bandwagon.
Come on.
Maybe they'll help replace some of the the Patreon supporters that we lost over the...
Yeah, they'll be back.
Not that I'm sore over the debacle that
be
Patreon
back.
caused.
They're coming back.
Yeah, I don't hold a grudge at all against our supporters. I'm more ticked off at Patreon the way they chose to do it.
Right.
So much love to everybody. We appreciate it. We couldn't do what we do without you. Now, make sure after you listen to this episode, if you haven't already, listen to True Crime All the Time. We finish up on the infamous Jeffrey Dahmer.
Yeah, we did.
Part 2 is much, much rougher than part 1 as far as the gory details go. Might want to partake on that one with on an empty stomach.
Yeah, wasn't.
If you're like Gibbs.
Yeah, if you're like me.
Most true crime fans don't have a problem with that. They're used to that.
Yeah, they're sitting there roasting a chicken.
Yeah, we hear it all the time. Yeah, I was eating a ham sandwich and listened to it. No problem. I washed it down with a side of wings.
Steak tartare.
So just wanted to let everybody know, Gibby and I originally, we took off the week of Thanksgiving. We were going to take off the week of Christmas, but instead we decided, we're going to put out an episode, but it's going to be a different type of episode. It's not going to be a full-blown true crime. It's going to be more of a holiday themed episode. Us talking about our childhood, our favorite toys, whatever we decide to do.
Just going to give you a little riff.
Yeah. No, it's just something that, we don't have to do a lot of research on, but hopefully we can have fun with, we can make it funny, and people will have something to listen to so that we're not taking another full week off.
Yeah, I like that.
You like that?
I do.
Well, I'm glad you like it.
It's the season to give. I'm a giver.
I got to keep the big guy happy, so.
I'm a giver, giffer, all that stuff.
You are definitely a giffer.
Yeah,
You're
I'm
a gifting
giffer.
machine.
And I'm a giver.
All right, so on this episode, True Crime All Time Unsolved, we're talking about George Smith. And George Smith was 26 years old. We're going back to 2005 time frame. And George was a good-looking guy.
He was a good-looking man.
Very handsome. And to his friends and family, described as a really good guy. Hardworking, funny, like you, Gibbs. Basically, they said he was a lot like Gibby.
Yeah, handsome, funny,
charming,
hardworking.
But, according to his mom, just an overall great son. The son that every mom would like to have. And George worked with his dad, George Smith Sr., at the family liquor store in Greenwich, Connecticut. That's where they lived. And the plan was that George Jr., who we're just going to call him George, was going to take it over. Right? When his dad retired, he was going to take over the liquor store and start running it. And this was a very successful liquor store.
It really was.
This was not a hole-in-the-wall place.
No, this was...
They were making some cash.
Yes, they were.
And the locals, they loved the store because they loved the Georges, the two Georges, as they were known. But George Smith Jr., very excited about the future of the store. I think as a young guy, as a smart guy, as an entrepreneur, he had a lot of things in his head, Gibbs, that he wanted to do.
Take it to that next level.
Right. So his dad had built it. He had done a great job. But now I'm going to come in. Here's my future. We're going to, it's going to skyrocket.
Right.
I think he had those type of plans. So you have to look at his life, right? At 26 years old, he's doing very well. Making some good money.
Yeah, he's in great shape, good-looking guy, great personality, making good money. What's he missing?
I think he's missing, somebody to spend the rest of his life with.
Yeah.
And he would meet that person.
And he would.
In the form of a very attractive school teacher by the name of Jennifer Hagel.
Yeah, she was extremely beautiful. And she had a really good personality, just like him. I mean, they both had large personalities.
And they like to have fun. I mean, they were funny. They like to kid around.
Well, people like to be around them too. That type of, kind of like you. People like to be around you. You're the center of attention.
Magnetic personality. I get it.
You're magnetic something.
Magnetic. What is it when the magnets cause the other magnet to fly off? Reverse polarity. Whatever it is. That's me. That's my magnetic personality.
Yeah, you are.
But they did. I mean, they had a lot of similarities, a lot of things in common. And George would propose and Jennifer would accept after a 3-year engagement. So they were probably engaged, Gibson? Sometime in 2002. Now we're up into 2005. They get married on June 25th, 2005 in Newport, Rhode Island. And this wasn't just any wedding, right? This wasn't, I'm not putting down any normal weddings, but they chose to get married like on a cliffside overlooking the sea. I mean, they really did it up.
Picture perfect, man.
Yeah, like a picture perfect wedding. It was over the top or very, very extravagant.
Yeah.
Let's say that. I shouldn't say over the top. I mean, if you got the money, do whatever you want to do, but not the type of wedding that I had the money for at 22 years old when I got married.
Yeah, me neither.
George had a sister named Bree, and she would say that George was so happy to get married, and so was Jennifer for that matter, but they were also really looking forward to going on their honeymoon because they had booked a cruise. And this wasn't like the cruises that I've been on where you fly down to like Florida and sail around the Bahamas for a little bit and come back.
Right.
They were flying out to Barcelona.
Yeah.
Or Barcelona, depending on how
you say it.
I've heard some people say it that way.
I say Barcelona.
Yeah, I do too.
That's what I did when I went there to run with the bulls.
Did you?
No.
Is that when you got gored in your anus?
No, that was...
Oh, that was a different time?
That local farm down the street.
That was a local bull?
Yeah, we're not supposed to talk about that.
Sorry, I forgot. That's on the list of no-nos.
Yeah.
But they were going to fly all the way to Barcelona. Then they were going to get on this big, massive Royal Caribbean cruise ship, the Brilliance of the Seas.
It's a big boy.
Yeah, it's a big daddy. So they do this, right? They board the ship. They sail off.
I wonder if the Love Boat theme song comes on,
Well, why don't you sing us a little bar of it and we'll...
No, I don't want to... Got to pay extra for that.
That's a pay-per-view type of thing?
That's a pay-per-view.
If you want to see or hear Gibby sing the...
Listen.
The
Love Boat song.
Love Boat theme song. But at the first night dinner, and anybody that's been on a cruise knows what this is like. Unless you are going with a great big group and you're going to fill up a whole table.
Right.
On that first night, you're getting there and seeing who you're going to be sitting with.
It's kind of nervous.
A little bit.
Yeah, I've been on a lot of cruises, and I'm always like, I wonder who's going to be at the table.
Yeah. I've been on 2 or 3, and we've gotten lucky every time. The people have been cool. We've actually kept in contact afterwards.
Yeah.
But, go ahead.
Our honeymoon, we met a couple really good couples. We met some good couples.
I bet you did.
Yeah.
Bow, chicken, bow, wow.
we did. We hung out with them for quite a bit. But
I just made Gibby blush.
You did.
I don't see that very often. Sorry to
and that was a Royal Caribbean as well.
Was it?
Yeah.
I didn't mean to sully your honeymoon
thank
there.
you for that. I guess some of the cruise lines today, they don't do it that way where they kind of corral you all together at tables. Mm-hmm. Now they have more like an open dining. You pick your time, go, and you don't have to sit with other people.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the last couple ones I've been on, you pick your time, but there's only a couple times, and you still have you're sitting with the same people throughout the duration
tour.
Yeah,
whatever they call it,
the 3-hour tour.
Gilligan.
But this first night, they do meet another couple, much like Gibbs on his honeymoon, apparently. And this couple was Paul and Galina Vitsnitsky, and they were also celebrating their honeymoon. So, kind of a stroke of luck there. You got 2 young couples, both celebrating, this amazing time in their lives, and they hit it off. And over the next couple of days, they get to know each other really well. They're dining together, but they're hanging out together, on the ship and even off, like on the excursions and things like that.
Yeah, you know what? We did the same thing. We found ourselves...
do please continue.
No, we found ourselves, hanging out with the other couple, walking the island or doing the excursions. Yeah, it was a good time.
I'm sorry. I just felt like when you started that off, it sounded like there was a story to come there.
You still have that chicka bow wow in your head?
I shouldn't have
Bow
started
chicka
that.
wow wow.
I can't get it out of my head. But everything you read and the research and all that talks about the fact that they were living it up, which they should have been. This is their honeymoon. This is the do it all, don't really worry about money, time of your life.
Yeah, it's the time to just let loose.
Yeah, when you get back to home, You worry about that credit card bill. You got years to pay that bad boy off.
Slap that Speedo on and walk around that deck, man.
That's what I thought your story. That's the way I thought your story was going to go.
Banana hammock or something like that.
I think it's a banana hammock.
Well, that too.
You said banana.
Banana. I just kind of slurred. That's all.
Gibbs been drinking since 3:00.
Yeah.
They lived it up. They were staying up, into the early morning hours. They were drinking. When I went on my cruises, we went later in life. I had my kids. We weren't really partying it up too much.
Yeah, well, that kids were with you?
Yeah, we took
like a Disney type of cruise?
No, it was a regular cruise. We just always took the kids.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun, wasn't it?
We had a lot of fun.
That's what I mean. You think I didn't mean it was a lot of fun?
Yeah, I thought you were being sarcastic that I had to take my kids on a cruise.
It was a lot.
Because I didn't get to wear the banana
hammock. Don't let the kids stop you doing that.
But Paul would later, after what's going to happen, he would say that George was kind of a lightweight. And he, when it came to drinking, after a few beers, he was a little drunk. So I don't know if George was not used to drinking a lot. It's a little strange. He owned a liquor store, but it doesn't mean anything. Maybe he wasn't a big drinker. I don't know. But the bottom line is it didn't take a whole lot for him to, get tipsy, I guess is the point to make.
Oh, we all know people like that. Been out back in the day. You knew what buddy of yours could or couldn't handle their alcohol.
Or my wife, for that matter.
Or your wife's not very good.
Cannot handle her alcohol.
Yeah. I don't know how I know that, but
I don't want
to. One, she's only like 80 pounds.
Yeah, she doesn't weigh very much, so it doesn't take much for her to get tipsy. And she doesn't drink that much, so.
Which is surprising, to put up with you.
Having to live with me.
You have to.
I knew that was coming.
Yeah.
I knew that was coming. So on July 5th, 2005, the two couples, they decide to meet at the casino around midnight, and casino security cameras do pick them up and would place George in the casino around this time. The cameras show that Jennifer was playing blackjack in the casino. And then later on, you can see George playing craps.
It's a good game, man, if you know what you're doing.
I don't know how to play.
Win a lot of money.
I've seen it on TV.
Or lose a lot of money.
I know Snake Eyes is bad, but I really don't know how to play. Yeah,
I like blackjack, though.
I like blackjack because I think it's one of the few games where you have a real fighting chance.
Yeah, it depends how many decks they're using.
Yeah.
1 deck, 2 deck, 3.
There's obviously some luck involved, but there's some skill, I think, in that one.
Yeah. I do like the game where, that they just put their hands behind their back and you guess if they're odd or even.
Was that like from Las Vegas Vacation?
Yeah, Las Vegas Vacation.
That's not what it was called. What was it called?
Vegas
Vacation.
Yeah, Chevy.
Yeah, I got a kick out of that. All right, so we got to get back to this story, Gibbs. I know we get off on tangents sometimes. Sometimes that's fun, though. So the security cameras, they got them. They show them. And one thing to talk about is George made some other friends on the ship over the first several days that they were on it. And some of these guys would hang out with George playing craps in the casino. One of them was a man by the name of Josh Askin. And Josh had a couple of friends that he had just met on the ship. And these were Russian-American students. They were cousins, Zachary and Greg Rosenberg. And then a friend of theirs that came with them by the name of Rusty Kaufman. So George and Jennifer are betting pretty large sums of money.
Yeah, they're dropping some cash.
Like I said, they have some money.
Yeah.
They come from money. He's making pretty good money, and they're spending it. They're having a good time. They're gambling. At some point, George, who they know this happened because they can see it on the monitors, he's at the casino with Josh Askins when he decides to go back to his cabin to get more money for Jennifer, right? Because like I said, they're throwing down some money. They're probably losing quite a bit. He needs to go back, fill up his coffers and hers as well. And a big aspect to this story is the way that George and Jennifer were gambling. They were acting like high rollers, throwing around a lot of cash. They were also dressed like they were high rollers.
Yeah, they were dressed to the nines.
Not only clothes, but jewelry and watches. And
oh, he had that Breitling, I guess.
Breitling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of my dream watches at one time.
Yeah. And that's the one that has the button that if your plane goes down, you hit the button.
That's in James Bond.
No, there is a Breitling watch.
Well, there probably is. A little tracking device.
You hit the button, it'll send out a signal.
Yeah.
But to reset it costs like, I don't know, $10,000 or $15,000, $20,000, something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, they're great. They're a great watch. And
or the money, I think you have to pay the money for them to come find you.
Well, that would.
So you don't want to hit that button inadvertently.
Yeah, that'd be worth it, though.
Well, if you were really
downed.
Yeah. Not if you're sitting in your living room playing around with your watch.
Had a little too much to drink and hit the button.
But I don't want to harp on this, but it's important because...
What's a persona that they're putting out there?
Yeah, and people are seeing it, and they're equating it with the fact that they have a lot of money. And it comes into play in the story. You talked about the Breitling watch. You know, a lot of guests after the fact are going to talk about how they thought George and Jennifer were extremely wealthy by the way that they acted, by what they wore, all of that. And some of this story comes from Paul, and he would say later that night, early morning, George and Jennifer were extremely drunk. As that morning kind of went on, they were partying hard and late.
Well, you know how those cruises go. Well, you had your kids with you, but typically, you're drinking during the day and then drinking at dinner, and man, it just keeps rolling. So,
and you're usually in international waters,
That's right.
There's no rules.
There's no rules.
You can do whatever you want.
Don't have to worry about getting in a car and driving anywhere.
Well, that's true. But back to Paul, I mean, I think he started to worry about them a little bit, to the point where he actually asked them to call it a night because he could see that they were really intoxicated.
Yeah, that's always tough. We all had that friend where you had to say, hey.
I'm usually that
You're the one
guy
that we have to say, hey.
Yeah.
You need to quit, drinking, man. Here's some water or coffee or something.
Yeah, because my problem has always been, I'm good. There's no transition into shit-faced. It just, I fall off a cliff.
Just boom.
Yeah, I don't know why, so
yeah,
I'm usually really careful with it. Because I don't want Frank the Tank to come out and then... But George and Jennifer, they're not ready to shut it down. So Paul goes back to his stateroom, and it's going to be the last time that he would ever see George, ever. And around dawn that morning, the ship was docked outside of Kusadasi, Turkey. This is July 5th, 2005. At about 7:30 that morning, a 16-year-old named Emily Rausch walked out onto her balcony. She was going to take some pictures. And while doing this, she looks down and sees a huge blood stain on the cover of one of the lifeboats. And she would describe it later, Gibbs, as being such a big blood stain, right? So much blood had to have been lost to make this type of blood stain. She assumed someone died right then and there, right on the spot. That's how much blood, I guess.
Yeah, it was pretty heavy.
It was massive. So very quickly, cruise line security is called in. They're trying to determine what happened, where that blood came from. And it doesn't take them long to figure out that most likely it came from whoever was in room 9062. And so what they do is they get on the intercom and they page for the Smiths, George and Jennifer, because obviously they have a manifest. They know who's occupying room 9062. And one of the people that George had become friendly with on the boat hears the page, knows who's in that room, goes to security and says, you know what? That guy was really drunk last night. And there's a good chance that he's sleeping it off and probably is not even hearing it. Because I don't know about you, Gibbs, but I remember from the cruises that I took, if you had the door shut, I had a hard time hearing some of the announcements. We used to have to open the door. Now, I'm sure it varies from cruise line to cruise line. And this friend that told security about George also tells him about Paul. Hey, maybe you should check with Paul. Paul's friends with George. So security does go to Paul's cabin. They ask him and his wife if they've seen George that morning. They say no, they haven't seen him. And they're asked to head up to the guest relations office. And when Paul and Galena get up there, they see Jennifer. Guest services had already found Jennifer. Apparently, she was getting a massage that morning, and she had it scheduled, so they were able to locate her. And all three, Jennifer, Paul, and Galena, are told at this point by guest relations that George is presumed to have fallen overboard. They would question Jennifer, which you would expect, but she tells them that, she was so drunk, she doesn't remember even leaving the casino, has no memory of what happened after she left. And when she woke up that morning, George was not in the room, and she figured that he must have fallen asleep, maybe in Paul and Galena's room or in one of their new friends' rooms, something like that. Jennifer starts freaking out during this questioning, and she asks if she could call her dad. She makes that call, and she tells her dad that George went overboard and that he's missing or maybe even dead. And it's Jennifer's dad who has to call George's parents and break this awful news to them about their son. So at this point, Gibbs, all the parents know is that George is believed to have gone overboard somehow. I mean, they don't have any facts. They're probably worried sick out of their mind. What they didn't hear about at this point in time was that this massive amount of blood was found. Security on the ship begins investigating the overboard claim and the blood stain. And remember, they're in Turkey. So they get help from the Turkish police, who are now on board the ship. So police and security, they round up Josh Askin, Rusty Kaufman, and Zach and Greg Rosenberg, the Russian-American cousins. But there's going to be a lot of scrutiny on this investigation.
Jack, you've been saying that you think this investigation's been tainted. Tell us what you mean.
Well, I think from the very beginning, there's no doubt about it, Alan, that the cruise line botched this investigation. There was blood sighted on the awning outside the cabin, and at about after the 4 a.m. more or less thump was heard. 7 a.m., 3 hours later, witnesses see crew members out scraping up the blood. And is this a cleanup or is this a cover-up? I mean, this is no way to handle a professional investigation, number one. Number two, they go to, instead of interviewing witnesses in a professional manner, 2 days later, crew members or some security details are interviewing witnesses, a couple actually, who heard some things and saw some things. And in the process of the interview, they're smearing the Smiths.
So I wanted to play that clip because it really gives you some insight into, what a professional thought about how this investigation went. Now, he talks about some things that we haven't talked about yet, and we'll get to them, but I thought it was a good place to play the clip. So they've rounded up these young guys, and they're talking to them, and they would tell the authorities that around 2:30 a.m., when the casino closed, they noticed something weird as they were riding the elevator up to the disco club. What they see is the casino manager, whose name is Lloyd Botha. He puts his arm around Jennifer Smith. And, these guys said it seemed very strange. They know she just got married. She's on her honeymoon. So this group gets up to the disco. They continue drinking. They're partying. Gibbs, it was even said that they were drinking absinthe straight.
That's some strong stuff, man.
It is.
Wow.
And George is up in the disco as well. And what these guys say in their interview is that it seemed as though George and Jennifer were very upset with each other, to the point where one of the guys says he saw Jennifer kick George in his groin and then storm out of the disco. And as she leaves, they see Lloyd Botha following her out. But they don't stop there, Gibbs. I mean, they're throwing out things in this interview, going as far as saying that at least one of the guys believes that Jennifer and this Lloyd Botha hooked up, after her storming out and him following her. They would state that an hour later, the disco was closing. Jennifer never came back. They never saw her, but George was in really rough shape. I mean, so drunk, slumped over in his chair that they said they had to help him get back to his cabin. So that's their story.
Yeah.
That's the way they explained it.
Remember, they said that he couldn't hold his liquor. He had a lot of it, so.
Now, they know that someone entered George and Jennifer's cabin at 3:52 a.m. You know, the ship's key entry log records the time, so they know that. Now, the guys would say that that was them helping George get back to his cabin, because there's no way he could have gotten there on his own. He was so drunk. But when they got there, Jennifer's not there. She's not inside the cabin. They don't know where she is. Now, the guys tell the police that George kind of freaked out. He wants to know where his wife is, and he's sloppy drunk, but he wants to go find her. And at this point, the group is saying, they're a little unsure if they even want to help him. I mean, I think he's so drunk he probably can't even stand up at this point.
Yeah, I think it'd be,
according to their version.
Yeah, he's definitely not coherent.
Yeah, so they're going to carry him around the ship looking for Jennifer. They don't really want to do that, but at some point they do decide that they're going to help him, and they all head out together, but they're not out very long because the records show that George and Jennifer's cabin is accessed again at 4:01. It's like 9 minutes between.
They probably got him out, walked him down to the elevator, and said, "Yeah, she's not down here," and walked back.
Yeah,
thinking he's not going to know any different.
Yeah, we don't know what happened. We only know 9 minutes between key entries. Not really sure what happened inside those 9 minutes, but we do know what the guys say happened. So they get back 4:01. One of the guys uses the bathroom. The others are trying to lay him on the bed, and they say, George thanks them for everything that they did, and that's their story, right? They leave George alone in his cabin. But where this story starts to get twisted a little bit is with Cleet Hyman. And Cleet Hyman is the passenger staying in the cabin next door to the Smith's cabin, and he tells the police that just a little bit after 4 a.m., he hears some type of disturbance next door coming from where the Smiths are staying. And Cleet's a deputy police chief. He's on vacation on this ship. And when he talks to police, he knows what he heard.
Should be a pretty reliable source.
Right. It's a guy that has encountered a lot of different situations. He knows he heard some yelling, but he describes it not as an argument, not as a fight type of yelling, but more like a drinking game, partying.
Just some guys being loud.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the way that Cleet describes it. But a few minutes after this yelling, he hears what he describes as an argument on the balcony with what he estimates is about 3 or 4 different guys. Now, the young guys, they would later say that no one in their group went out on the balcony, and Cleet would say that the argument stopped abruptly and he heard somebody say good night. It was like a good night that you would use when asking somebody to leave your room. Like, get out. Good night.
Thanks for coming by.
I said good day.
Good day, sir.
And at this point, again, it's like 4 something in the morning, but he's up and he looks out of his peephole and he sees 3 guys walking away.
Now, he's a deputy, so I'm sure he knows what he sees.
But I will say peepholes are a little deceiving. You don't get a real wide, you don't get a big, large viewing area. So he sees 3 guys, but the guys in this story say, there were 4 of them. They all left at the same time. So were there only 3? Or was one just ahead of the peephole when he looked out and he only saw 3?
Yeah,
that's what I mean by pretty small range of view.
And they make that case by saying one of the guys is really skinny, one of the guys is kind of big, and
maybe he was
blocking the view.
He was blocked by a big guy.
Yeah.
But Cleet's not done. He's got more information to tell authorities because after the guys left, after he sees them walk down the hall, he can hear somebody talking in the Smith cabin. And he says it's one person, it's a male, he described it as, almost like this, somebody was talking to themselves, but they're walking around, they're opening and closing cupboards, doors, they're moving furniture around. This is what it sounds like to him. And this would actually be confirmed by a neighbor on the other side who said, yeah, it sounded like somebody was trashing the room. And then Cleet said it got super quiet for about 2 minutes. And then all of a sudden he heard what he described as a big thud type of noise. So this was kind of referenced on the clip we played a little bit earlier. This is the 4 o'clock, 4 something thud. So security is taking all this information in, right? They've talked to the young guys, they've talked to Cleet, they've talked to the neighbor on the other side, and they're making an assumption about this loud noise. And their thought is that, this was when George either fell or was pushed over the side and hit the metal cover of the lifeboat.
Yeah, and they would say this is probably around 4:30 in the morning, which would also happen to be the same time that Jennifer is discovered in a hallway where she passed out.
So we got kind of a game of Clue here developing, Gibbs. George is in the stateroom, Jennifer is in the hallway, and the 4 young guys around the same time say that they were back in their rooms ordering room service at 4:30 a.m.
It's a great whodunit.
It is. It's shaping up to be a real mystery. The investigation continued, and as you can imagine, Jennifer is put on the hot seat by the media. She's the new bride, the spouse. The questions are, did she do it? Did she have something to do with it? Did she get somebody else to do it? I mean, Jennifer even went on the Oprah show.
It was a pretty big event.
Claiming her innocence. She wanted to tell the whole world. And what she said to Oprah was that, it was very hard for her because, first of all, she had no memory of that night. She was blackout drunk. I mean, she passed out in a hallway. And then on top of that, no one believed her story. Even some people that were very close to her were really doubting her story and whether or not she had something to do with this.
And for her, it had to be frustrating because she's saying, man, I don't remember anything. You've been that way, Frank the Tank. You wake up, you don't remember.
Never on a cruise ship, but no, I have been.
Yeah.
But Jennifer wasn't the only one that was in the media hot seat. The 4 young guys that we've talked about, they would be in and out of the media, sometimes on a nightly basis on different shows being talked about as to whether they had something to do with it or they were in cahoots with Jennifer and had done something on her behalf. And this is a case, Gibbs, where a lot of people were torn. A lot of people were split about this case. Was it an accident? Was it murder? One of the questions was, did George simply get too drunk, mess around in the room, open up the balcony door and fall over? Or did somebody push him over on purpose? I mean, that's really the big question. The ship's captain felt that it was an accident. George's family thought no way. They disagreed with that. And they offered up a $100,000 reward for any information that would lead to an arrest. The FBI opened up an investigation as well. And this is when the FBI start to look at the 4 young guys. They are really the people that are saying that they were the last to see George alive.
Does that make sense? That's where you would want to go.
You got to look at them. And then the FBI gets into reading some of the reports. And it talks about blood found in the stateroom. And this blood was actually documented in some photos that were taken by cruise line security. And what these photos show is 2 small lines of blood on the bed sheets, which they determined was George's blood. And so this is where, George's family comes in and they're convinced that there was some type of foul play involved, even though the cruise line is saying, this is an accident, possibly even a suicide. But obviously, Gibbs, it's in the cruise line's best interest for this not to be a homicide. Right? You would agree with that. That doesn't look good.
No, it doesn't look good at all.
You don't want that type of crime
No.
on what is thought to be, for a lot of people, a family vacation or a safe place to be.
Ruin tourism for sure.
Yeah. Now, the family hires an attorney to help them out with their own investigation, and this attorney goes after some of the cruise ship records for that night. And on top of that, he decides to depose the 4 young men individually to see what their story is now. So the attorney starts with Josh Askin, and he asks him if he knew anything about the murder of George, if he knew who did it, all types of different questions. Josh pleads the fifth on every question. Now, he was advised by counsel to do this, so I'm not making anything out of that.
Yeah, that's just good common sense. You know, your attorney's going to give you that advice, especially in a, you know, we got an international case here. They've already been questioned once by the FBI and security, and this is the private attorney for the family coming back through and questioning them individually now. If you say something different, you could set yourself up for some perjury.
Yeah, even on accident, right?
Yeah.
Even if you are now remembering it a little differently, or, I mean, the bottom line is if your attorney says to do that, in your best interest probably to do that.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, Josh's attorney would come out and say that he had been very helpful up until this point, but they changed tactics. And the reason they did is, according to him, because the private attorney hired by the family and the FBI started to get what they called overly aggressive with Josh. And then we get to Rusty Kaufman. You know, he experienced the same type of aggressive questioning, and he was advised by his attorney not to speak as well. But instead of pleading the fifth, he would just say, I don't have a recollection of that right now. I mean, that was his standard answer to the deposition questions. Zach Rosenberg took the fifth on all the questions. And then his cousin Greg was actually in a Florida prison when these depositions were going on, because this is 2010, right? So 5 years have passed when this family attorney gets involved. We probably should have said that up front, but it's 2010. And he was in prison for trafficking OxyContin. He was a little more open with the attorney, because the attorney goes to the prison to interview him. And he said that, yeah, he was selling drugs to make money. He had an expensive lifestyle that he was trying to maintain. But he did say that he didn't kill anyone. He could have never done that. He didn't have the heart to do that type of thing. When he was asked about George, specifically, he said he had nothing to do with him being missing or the alleged murder. And at one point during the deposition, the attorney asked Greg about the room service, because that was kind of a big thing, right? If that was their thing. At 4:30, they claimed that they were back in their room, or rooms. I don't know how many rooms they had, and they ordered room service as a group.
Yeah, and they want to know, what'd you order?
Yeah,
and he's like, tuna fish sandwiches.
Pretty smart question, actually.
Cheeseburgers, I think. And I think he was just telling them that they were all just kind of excited that the fact that they could get room service that late and get food. They were kind of amazed by that.
What would have been interesting, and I'm sure what the thought process was there, is if the other three would have answered, to be able to compare those answers, right? But he didn't get the other three, so he just has one guy saying what they ordered.
Do you have any idea what happened or what you think happened?
No, I wish I did, because I've been through enough. Like I've been through enough through it too. You know, people getting subpoenaed on my name, write statements, and searching, and people call me a murderer because they don't know the truth. I got the internet blasting my name, detriment of character, a lot of assuming, and people jump to conclusions. Mm-hmm. And I feel like I got it worse than my cousins did, maybe because of the lifestyle I lived.
Mm-hmm. Did you have anything to do with George's death?
No, never did. Never would, never thought about it, no.
Okay. Did any of your cousins?
No.
How about Josh?
No. I could say no. I don't think he's that type of dude.
How about you? Have you talked to your cousins since the cruise?
Yeah.
Okay.
Here and there, me and my cousins' relationships and that side
Not
of
the same?
It never was. We never really were tight. We're two different individuals, like I explained to you.
Have you seen Rusty since or talked to him?
One time, when I went back to live in New York, when I went back to hang out in New York a couple times, I've seen him. I've had plenty of times where I wanted to go on CBS, CNN, and do something like this, but I just know they're gonna lead to, oh, you've been in prison, and it's just gonna lead to me looking even worse. You know what I mean? You can't judge a book by its cover neither. Everybody goes through their trials and tribulations in life. And I took this course this little fork on the road to go positive. You know, I was always taught a positive road is very narrow and easy to fall off. A negative road is wide and corroded. It's easy to jump on a bandwagon. Man, if I knew who killed George, or if I knew what happened to George, or anything that happened with the man that I could help with, I put that on record, man, I would help. Why not? Innocent man got hurt for no reason, man. I'm all for it. I'll testify, I'll do whatever I gotta do. You know what I'm saying? I also feel like in due time I should get some credentials. Maybe not. Maybe that's the wrong word. I should get paid for my suffering.
Because of what you've been put through?
Yeah, for what my family's been through, the money they spend on lawyers for unnecessary reasons, being treated like a suspect, DNA samples getting taken, hair ripped out your head, swabs of the mouth, for what? Putting me on the internet on blast, putting me on CNN on blast, making a movie about me that's supposed to show tonight. I don't deserve that, not at all, especially when I was willing to help. Somebody will pay me for it.
Did you tell the cruise line that you were willing to help?
Yes.
Yeah.
We all did. But we were gonna keep our mouths shut until we got a lawyer, we got attorneyed up, and then we could do it properly. I even offered polygraphs and everything, man.
You never came back and told anybody that you had something to do with it, right?
No, never.
Okay. All right.
I've been asked that question 5 million times.
Which question? This is the question I just
How
asked
you did that? What did you do that night? Did you kill him? Did you do this? First off, if I did do that, I wouldn't be sitting here right here with you. That's first off, I wouldn't talk to you. Second off, every person that ever asked me that question, I say, man, whatever happened that night, man, is dead and gone, and that's it. And it ain't my business. That's
And
to
you
the
weren't
point.
part of it.
Yeah, and I'm not part of it. It was to the point where I just didn't want to deal with it. And somebody asked me a question, I told them, man, I don't know what happened. It ain't your business. Whatever happened, happened, man. What you want to know? You think I'm a murderer? You want to find out? That's what I would tell them. Scare them the hell off. That's what I would do. I'm that type of dude. I could be either really nice and fall back and lean and chill out, or I could be aggressive. I'm sure everybody has animal nature in them.
So that was Greg talking to the family attorney in prison. And I don't know about you, Gibbs, but it was an interesting interview.
Yeah, I thought so.
At one point, I swear he used like 15 different cliches in like a 2-sentence. It was just like cliche after cliche, and they didn't actually match. I got a kick out of that.
He said a movie's coming. I wonder, did Marky Mark play him?
I don't know. He's got a real interesting accent, too.
Probably going to want paid by you.
He wants credentials.
Yeah. He wants some credentials.
And then I think he was saying like he wanted reparations or
sound like it.
Something like that. Now, at one point, the attorney for the family, he gets his hands on some of the Royal Caribbean internal documents. And when he looks at some of these records, he sees that the guys called for room service a couple of times. But the records clearly indicate that no food was ever delivered to the room. Now, these are handwritten records.
Yeah, so I mean, I think some of the thought is, could it just been a mistake? You know, was there an error involved? Or did they not get their tuna fish sandwiches and cheeseburgers?
But what is documented is that they did call more than once around the 4:14 a.m. time frame. But attorneys for these guys, I keep calling them these guys, right? I don't want to say all four of their names every time we talk about them.
Right.
But their attorneys say, this doesn't mean anything. They're all corroborating each other. So whether they got food delivered or not is kind of neither here nor there. That's what their attorneys are saying.
Well, and their attorney tries to put a little different spin on it. They try to get Jennifer injected back into the investigation by saying whatever happened to Jennifer, she left with the casino manager from the disco, trying to put, a spin on it. Maybe Jennifer maybe Jennifer did this.
I think trying to cast aspersions on her, cast doubt, shadows of doubt on her away from their clients, yeah. But then there's a part of it going back to this Jennifer leaving the disco and the casino manager allegedly following her, because there's some people that are saying, no, that's not what happened. You know, there are some folks that said that he did leave with her or after her, but there's others that are saying, no, he didn't. What is known is that he actually went to his girlfriend's room at 3:25 a.m., backed up by keycard records on the ship. So you have to think, if he was with Jennifer, it was not for a very long period of time. And there were some witnesses, at least one in particular, that would come forward a little bit later and say that they saw a very, very drunk Jennifer in the disco at 3:30 a.m. So this really kind of blows a hole in that whole timeline and some of the stories told by other people, if that part is true.
Right.
Because how can the casino manager be with her if she didn't leave when people said she did, and he's at his girlfriend's room at 3:25 a.m.?
So they never hooked up, based off these witnesses' stories.
But again, it's one of those this is another one of those cases of who do you believe and who's telling the truth, whose memory is better than whose. Now, this witness that come forward was actually a worker on the ship and would tell investigators that they actually helped Jennifer get on the elevator that morning. And this is the elevator that she ultimately took to the wrong floor, got off, and then passed out in the hallway. So she was not even on the right floor where their stateroom was.
Right.
That's how drunk she was.
She didn't know where she's at, got out, so drunk, just passed out
and that was it. I just can't make it anymore. I got to lay down. And
yeah. And even later, both her and the casino manager, Lloyd, they took polygraphs, and they both passed them.
It'd be very hard for me to believe that Jennifer had anything to do directly with what happened to George. She was, by everybody's statements, so drunk that I don't think she could have physically done much to George.
Yeah.
Furthermore, being that drunk, could she have hatched a plan with somebody if it wasn't done way ahead of time?
It'd been one of those silly, all right.
You go over here and I'll go over here. And so, yeah, I mean, from all the research and all the statements that were made and the facts that we know, I just think it'd be very hard to put her kind of in this.
I agree.
And the casino manager, for that fact. There would be some information that would come out that would paint the young guys that we've been talking about in this episode in a different light, more of that they were troublemakers on the ship, not the do-gooders that they claim to be in some of their statements. I mean, the ship had a bunch of complaints.
Yeah, well, these are 18, 19-year-old boys. We call them men.
Yeah.
Boys, men, whatever.
No.
But they're in international waters, so you can drink, and they're drinking. They're smoking. They're doing all the things that
dumb kids do. Well, and there were also complaints that they were cussing at ship employees. And
they're dropping the F-bomb left and right.
But there was an 18-year-old female that filed a complaint that she had been sexually assaulted by this group of guys a few days after George went missing. So in her statement, what she said was that she went to their room. She was very intoxicated. A few of these guys had sex with her, took advantage of her because she was so drunk. She could not fight them off. And at some point, she says she actually blacked out. And in her report says that the guys actually recorded some of what happened. And while the FBI is looking into this case, they actually find this homemade videotape. Now, the attorneys for these young men would say that this was consensual. And one of the attorneys for these guys would go so far as to say that it was more of this 18-year-old girl taking advantage of them. Yes, I don't get that.
I don't get it either.
How's an 18-year-old girl intoxicated going to take advantage of 3 or 4 guys? That makes no sense.
It doesn't. the comment that he made, I was just like,
that seems asinine to even make that comment. And allegedly on this tape, one of the guys is asking the 18-year-old female a bunch of questions.
It's just stuff like, you liking this? You enjoying this? Is this what you wanted? But eventually it goes from normal answers, to more of hysterical crying. But the guys don't stop having sex with her.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, from everything that you read, it's clear from people that have seen the tape that she did not want this to happen. What was going on, she did not want to happen. So I know we had that jump in time to 2010, Gibbs, and I think it's important to talk about. But what we're talking about now with this FBI investigation, this is back then. This is back on the ship. And it's important because this 18-year-old female, she reports this to the cruise line. And the FBI learns of it. Right? This is where they get the tape, and this whole time frame is interconnected. But what the FBI does is they ask the cruise line, have these guys stay in their staterooms until the ship docks in Naples, Italy. And once that happens, the Italian police are able to view the tape and question the young guys. And they actually make a decision that, it's outside their jurisdiction. The authorities in Naples, they say, there's nothing we can do. So because of that, they're not charged. These guys are not charged with anything. Now, the attorneys for these guys would come out and say kind of the opposite of what a lot of people have said that have seen the tape. They say the tape is actually what kept the guys from getting arrested. They say it proves that the sexual encounter was consensual. So we talked about this videotape that the FBI has it. Other agencies have reviewed it, but there's more to this tape because the guys continue to videotape things on the ship after the sexual encounter occurs. And one of the things they do, they're sitting around a table and each one of the guys takes the camera, looks into it, and they're making comments about George's death. They're making jokes. They're joking about his wealth. One of the guys mentions that George went parachuting off his balcony. Now that doesn't sound too good, but it isn't like some kind of smoking gun. It's insensitive at the very least. It could be incriminating. But
wouldn't be the brightest thing to say. And
no, he could have been making a joke that this guy jumped off the balcony.
Yeah.
Very insensitive, very crass,
right.
But it doesn't, it's not the smoking gun that I think a lot of people maybe make it out to be.
Right. Another guy says, on the tape, told you I was gangsta, and it was that Greg.
What did he say?
Told you I was all gangsta.
Told you I was all gangsta?
Something like that.
Okay.
Yeah. It was that Greg that
we heard on the clip.
Heard on the clip.
Now, I do think people look at these comments as that they're bragging about George's death. There are a lot of people that have that perception. And the FBI want to know what they mean by the comments that they made on this tape, but the attorneys for the young guys, they won't allow them to talk about it.
No, they won't. No comment. And it'd be a few years later when the private attorney for George's family would try again to get them to speak about it.
Well, he already tried in 2010, but now we're up to 2013 and he's trying again. But I think what happens, Gibbs, in 2013 is very similar to what happened in 2010. Attorneys for these guys, they don't want them to talk. They explain to the family attorney that, hey, none of these guys knew that George was dead. They were simply making dumb statements. They were kids. They were trying to sound cool to each other. I mean, that's how they're explaining these comments. But none of this has stopped the attorney for the Smith family from continuing to look into this. And, he has developed what he feels was the real motive, the real reason that these guys may have killed George Smith. This is one of the things that he found out was that while George and Jennifer were on the boat, they had mentioned out loud a few times to a few different people that they had thousands of dollars in cash in their room, which was money that they had, got from their wedding. And we talked about the expensive jewelry, the way they were dressed. They came off as people that had a lot of money.
They did. They really did.
If you got the wrong element looking at you, they're seeing opportunity to get some of that money. And so the attorney thinks that this is what happened, that the boys befriended George. They helped him to his room that night, but with the additional motive of robbing him. They put him on the bed, and 3 of the 4 guys leave the room, while the 4th guy stays behind to search the room for cash. Now, this would explain what Cleet saw in his peephole. He saw 3 guys leave.
And the noise that the other neighbor heard sound like people opening and closing cupboards and drawers and moving furniture around.
And also maybe what Cleet said, he heard one guy talking.
Right.
This guy could have been talking to himself as he's looking.
Or talking to George and saying, where's the cash at? Where do you keep everything at?
No, you're right. Could have been. Now, we talked about a couple of small traces of blood, George's blood, that were found on the sheets pretty early on. And what they think happened was that this guy that stayed behind tried to take George's expensive watch off while he was passed out on the bed or laying on the bed. And while he was doing this, he pinched his skin, causing a small amount of blood. George wakes up. They argue. They struggle. They're fighting. And somehow they end up out on the balcony and George is thrown over. So this is the kind of set of events that the attorney believes may have happened. And to be honest, it does fit some of the things that we know to be true from witnesses.
Yeah, you can mold it together that way.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It fits, but that doesn't, you could make a lot of different things fit. Now, the attorneys for the guys say, this is nothing but speculation. They didn't have anything to do with George's disappearance. And they point to the fact that George was just very drunk and there's a lot of things that could have happened. Now, George Smith's family feels that Josh Askin knows more than he's told up to this point. And one of the reasons for that is because an employee of the cruise line apparently told investigators that they overheard Josh tell another guy on an elevator that he knew more than he told investigators, and that he was upset that the other guys almost got him arrested in Turkey. It's also been alleged that Josh and Rusty failed FBI polygraph tests, and Greg took a private one that was said to have been inconclusive.
And that's more because Greg has ADHD, so he twitches a lot. He can't sit still. He moves around a lot, and it throws off the readings.
And we go back to those depositions. 3 of the guys didn't talk. Greg was the only one that really talked, and he made one really bizarre statement. It wasn't on the clip that we played, but the statement was Greg saying, quote, George Allen Smith did not disappear or kill himself or hurt himself or slip and fall off the boat at 6'4" or however tall he is and just dive off. I know that didn't happen. So something crazy went down that night, and I hope one day that they find out the truth. So it's it is a strange statement for him to make because, in the clip that we played, you heard Greg say he didn't have anything to do with it.
Right. So what's he referring to?
He's clearly saying, or he appears to be saying, that he knows George was not the victim of like something accidental. That's what the statement appears to be.
Yeah, I mean, he's
saying.
leading the way to some type of foul play, but
maybe at the hands of one of his cohorts, but he's saying he didn't do it. I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard.
It's just that was one of, there's not a lot that came out in those depositions. So that was one of the things that kind of stood out. Now, George's family is still offering that $100,000 reward. And then, you have to talk about some of these people that, were involved in this back in the day. Jennifer lost her husband. She's moved forward. She eventually remarried.
How traumatic would that be? I mean, think about it. You find the love of your life. You have the storybook wedding. You go off to this cruise, and this happens, shakes and rocks your world, man. And somehow you got to get past it and move on. I just think it was so hard. And I wouldn't know how you would interact with your in-laws. You know, it'd be tough, right? Because you don't know, are they thinking I had something to do with it, even though I didn't? Even if they didn't, it would still be hard because you're seeing his face and their faces all the time.
Yeah, my assumption is at a certain point, there probably wasn't a lot of interaction. They didn't have kids.
Right.
So there was no need to interact on because of that. I would think at some point that interaction probably
just fizzles,
fades away.
Yeah.
But luckily, I mean, she was able to move on with her life, remarry.
Yeah, thank goodness.
And then, you got to talk about Rusty Kaufman. Rusty, one of the young guys on the ship, lives in New York, as does Zach Rosenberg. Mm-hmm. But Rusty went on to become an attorney.
Yeah. He's practicing law.
So obviously the guy was bright and was able to apply himself and get through law school and pass the bar and all that stuff. This is one of those, man, it is so strange. And we have a lot of these on Unsolved.
Yeah. And I feel for Bree and her mom and dad not knowing what happened to her brother. I mean, just the unknown, what really happened. It's rough all the way around.
No, it really is. But again, we tell these stories because I do think the facts are very interesting for people to weigh everything, see what you think for yourself, maybe investigate a little further. Obviously, I'm sure there's a lot more online than we can get through in an hour and change.
Oh, yeah.
But that's it. That is the case of George Smith. And this one's a little different, Gibbs, because technically we don't know whether he was murdered or not. No. Normally we're talking about an unsolved murder.
It's kind of
this is more of a mystery.
Missing.
Yeah, disappearance. Now, he hasn't turned up in all these years.
Right.
So you can almost safely assume that he's deceased.
Right. The conclusion's pretty.
But that doesn't mean he was murdered. He could have, hit that lifeboat cover, bounced over maybe into the water and drowned, and he may never be found. If that.
Yeah, I don't think there's any.
I don't think he'll be found anyway.
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be a castaway moment.
No, where he comes back after so many years,
right.
Which is sad. But
I mean, I would love it for his parents, but yeah, I don't see that happening.
It'd just be great if they could find out what happened to him.
Absolutely, yeah. Closure.
Yeah.
Most people don't know, but every year, 20 people go over missing on cruise ships all over the world. There has never been one arrest in the last 10 years. What does that tell you about Royal Caribbean and the cruise industry? The word is special interest, big money, and corruption. It is time that we do something forward to stop this.
So that was a clip that I kind of wanted to go out on, Gibbs. That was George Smith Sr. and, had some facts. And I kind of talked about it early in the episode, I think, where doing the research on this, you start to see a bunch of other cases of people on cruise ships going missing, potential foul play, those type of scenarios. So obviously he's grieving, I
understand.
Still after all these years. And
yeah.
All right. So we got a couple voicemails. Let's play those.
Hi, Mike and Gibby. This is Kelly King out here in New Hampshire. I wanted to thank you so much for my little present with the mug. I love everything. It's like Christmas, super early Christmas, but awesome. And I love your podcast. I listen to it all the time. And you guys do an awesome job, and keep your own time ticking. Have a great Christmas. Bye.
Just call me Santa.
Exactly. Well, Kelly got the full TCAT package, everything we have.
I packaged it up for her.
You did no such thing.
I pointed at it. I didn't do jack, is what you're going to say.
Jumped into the box.
I said it looks good.
Yeah, we appreciate it, Kelly. We appreciate your support.
I do.
So much.
Hi, this is Mary down in Jacksonville, Florida. I work at UPS, and we're going through peak season. I just want to let you know that I just love your show, and it gets me through the day, especially these long days for peak season at UPS. Have a great Christmas, and thank you.
Great voicemail from Mary.
Oh, I remember those days.
I was going to say, it's got to harken you back to your UPS days.
It did. I started with UPS right out of high school, went to college, worked there, was with them 10 years, man. And I remember the humping during the holidays.
Yeah, it's got to be super busy.
Wow, that last one was really great Unsolved with Dr. Ueda. I tell you what, if I killed someone, I would certainly want a jury. And if I did kill someone, I would go to California. Probably make people angry, but you know it's true. I wonder what the jury makeup was. Was it a jury that didn't believe the police in any form or case? This case seemed to be pretty solid. And also something I'll say probably pissed people off, but the father appears to be a scumbag. Just from saying he tried to roll the boyfriend under the bus the first chance he got, you know that he knows about this Ueda. He's been in dealings with him all the time. I have a daughter, and I would not sell her to the highest bidder for a job. So all the way around, very ugly case. Well, again, this is Max from Atlanta. Love the show. You guys do a great job. Take care. Bye.
Max always telling you how it is. Keeping it real.
He's a straight shooter, that Max is.
He is.
He always leaves good voicemails.
He does.
All right. Well, that is it for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.